But in honor of Mother's Day, I wanted to share some of the lessons that have been learned by mothers through the years. Now, these are humorous. Some of them you will think are crazy. Some of them you will know from experience. So let's see. One mother said, a 3-year-old's voice is louder than 100 other people in a crowded restaurant. A ceiling fan can hit a baseball surprisingly far. When you hear a toilet flush followed by, uh-oh, it's already too late. Legos, be encouraged, moms of little ones. Legos will pass through the digestive system of a 4-year-old. Painfully, but it will. Duplo blocks won't. If you don't know what that is, it's not funny, but if you do, it is. Garbage bags do not make adequate parachutes. Let me tell you, my mother found that out because of me. Oh, here's one. Always look in the oven before turning it on. Yeah. Here's one. Mixing brake fluid and bleach makes smoke. A lot of smoke. Like a lot of smoke. Super glue is forever. And here, the last one I got here. No matter how much Jell-O mix you pour into the swimming pool, you will not be able to walk on water. So let's take a moment and give it up for our moms who have learned these lessons because their kids really push the limit. Yes, so many of those stories I could tell you from my own childhood. My mother, I was the experimental child because I was the firstborn, and my parents didn't know what they were doing raising kids. My parents are great, but just like everybody, your first kid is the experiment kid. My sister came along 6 years later, and she got away with so much. I'm glad I could help train my mother. But we know, let's face reality here. Women are built differently. I don't understand, I don't mean just physically, but I just know that God made you different than He made men. Now, I can already hear some of your inner monologues. He's going to stand up there and tell women about women. No. I'm going to acknowledge that God made you differently in a beautiful and amazing way. He gifted you to be who He created you to be. He gave you instincts, things like love and wisdom and hospitality and discipline. And that's not to say that men don't have those attributes. But God equipped women with an extra measure. Now, you've heard the term mama bear when it comes to the instinct of a mother to protect her children. And in nature, we see that a lot. Some of you may have walked by a tree and a bird will dive bomb you because it thinks that you're after its nest. Or here's one that happens in my neighborhood and probably in a lot of yours. Those sandhill crane mamas. You got the babies and then they come walking through your yard like it's their yard. I get out of my car and I walk towards my door, and those sandhill crane mamas are aggressive. They're like, stay away from my babies. I'm like, I'm going into my house. I don't want nothing to do with your babies. Yes, ma'am. Please go along your way. I will go along mine. But, it's a say, or like if you ever had a dog that had puppies or a cat that had kittens and they're just extra protective. This loving, sweet puppy, this dog that you've had since it was a puppy, all of a sudden you get near her puppies and she starts growling. It's a mama bear instinct. I was... One of the things that crazy things I did when I was younger is we went out camping one night, and me and a bunch of other guys from high school, and on the way back into the truck from the campsite, was along the river, we saw a gator. It's about that long. It's like, okay, let's catch him. Okay. So we wade into the water, and we're about waist deep in this water, and we like 4 of us, and we're We've got the gator kind of in between us all. And the water's clear, but if you've ever kind of walked in a river, when you begin to walk, it stirs up sediment from the bottom. And so we're getting close in on this gator, and the gator's head was, it was about the size of my hand, and it, sitting on top of the water, and we go to reach, and then all of a sudden, bloop, he goes under. Okay, we have tightened the circle so much that this gator is close, and we don't know where. Thankfully, he didn't come towards me. But we looked down, and my friend Bobby came towards Bobby, and he reached down. It was coming straight for his waist. Reached down and grabbed that thing and yanked it up out of the water. It's thrashing all over the place, and we're having a great time. Oh, look, this is fun. As we make our way towards the shore, we hear... That gator's just a grunt. And we were fine until we heard... Mama was close. I don't know how it happened, but I went from waist-deep water into the back of a pickup truck in about 1-2 steps, and it was probably 30 feet away. I don't remember getting out of the water. I remember hearing that and then high-stepping until I'm in the back of the pickup truck. The guy threw it in drive. We took off. We had the baby gator with us. Didn't tape its mouth shut. So I'm in the back of the pickup, and that little gator's got his and bouncing all over the place. Yeah. That mama wanted to protect her baby, because mamas are like that. Mamas have that instinct. They're fierce when they're defending their young. Well, today I'm going to tell a story about 2 mothers, but one specifically who went above and beyond. In 1 Kings chapter 3, beginning in verse 16. Sometime later, 2 prostitutes came to the king to have an argument settled. What are you preaching? Hang on. Please, Lord, one of them began, this woman and I live in the same house. I gave birth to a baby while she was with me in the house. 3 days later, this woman also had a baby. We were alone. There were only 2 of us in the house. But her baby died during the night when she rolled over on it. Then she got up in the night and took my son from beside me where I was asleep. She laid her dead child in my arms and took mine to sleep beside her. In the morning, when I tried to nurse my son, he was dead. But when I looked more closely in the morning light, I saw it wasn't my son at all. Then the other woman interrupted, it certainly was your son, and the living child is mine. No, the first woman said, the living child is mine and the dead one is yours. So they argued back and forth before the king. I can imagine King Solomon just kind of doing this like he's watching a tennis match. And then finally, Then the king said, verse 23, let's get the facts straight. Both of you claim the living child is yours, and each says the dead one belongs to the other. All right, bring me a sword. So a sword was brought to the king. Then he said, cut the living child in 2, give half to one woman and half to the other. Then the woman who was the real mother of the living child and who loved him very much cried out, oh no, my lord, give her the child. Please do not kill him. But the other woman said, all right, he'll be neither yours nor mine. Divide him between us. Then the king said, do not kill the child, but give him to the woman who wants him to live, for she is his mother. Father, I thank you for this story. I thank you for the attributes of a mother. I thank you for my mother and for all those women in our lives that provide that godly example. Lord, as we look into your word today, reveal to us specifically how you want us to respond individually and corporately to what you're saying. Speak in Jesus' name. Amen. So I'm thankful that I had a godly mother. I know everybody didn't. I did, and I'm very grateful for it. I'm thankful for my praying grandmother as well. The Bible has many examples of great mothers, but this mother that we see this morning, she isn't the best role model. We don't even know her name. And some of you get that. You know, you're a mom, but you're known now as that person's mom or that person's grandma. You don't have your own identity anymore. That's kind of how it happens after a while. You're known as so-and-so's mom, so-and-so's grandma, or coaches know you that way, teachers know you that way, other parents call you that, where your identity is lost in it all. But this woman in 1 Kings, she's never identified by name. In fact, she's not even the main character of this story. This story, I grabbed this portion of the story out, but bigger picture, Solomon, King Solomon is the main character in this narrative. And it's written to show his wisdom. And these mothers, they're kind of background characters. Earlier in this chapter, God gives Solomon the opportunity. He can ask for whatever he wants, and God will give it to him. He doesn't ask for fame and fortune. He asks for wisdom. But because he didn't ask for all of that, God did give him wisdom, and he gave him wealth and fame, and all that came with it. And then right out the gate, his wisdom is tested when these two women come before him to fight over the baby's true identity. Now, this is not a parable. This is a true story. Jesus spoke in parables. He used earthly stories with heavenly principles to teach not only his disciples, but the masses. And so we can read parables and kind of see how it could be true. No, this is recorded in Israel's history. So this actually took place. And we don't know who this woman is, but we do know what she is. Verse 16 again. Sometime later, two, let's say that word together, prostitutes. Yes, now you can go home and say, I went to church on Mother's Day, and the pastor had me say prostitute along with everybody else in the room. Sometime later, two prostitutes came to the king to have an argument settled. That's how she's identified. Before she is even identified as someone who gave birth to a baby, she is identified as a prostitute. Because of that, she would have been considered among the lowest class of people in all Israel. But more important than who she is or what she is, I want you to notice where she is. She's standing before the king. These two prostitutes, and specifically I'm focusing on the one, is standing before the king. How does a prostitute get into the presence of the king of Israel? How does she get an audience with the king, let alone, how does anyone get an audience with the king, let alone a prostitute? Well, we can go back in Exodus and see how that all started. Moses was leading the Israelites. They had come out of Egypt and they were wandering in the wilderness, and from sun up to sundown, his day was filled with conflict resolution. People had problems, and they couldn't settle their disputes with each other, so they had to go to the leader. Moses was the leader. And so he would sit there and deal with people's issues all day long. His father-in-law, Jethro, had an idea. He's like, his father-in-law actually rebuked him. He said, you can't keep doing this. You're going to wear yourself out, and then who's going to lead all these people? You have no time or energy to deal with this. So in Exodus 18, this is his idea. Beginning in verse 21, he said, but select from all the people some capable, honest men who fear God and hate bribes. Appoint them as leaders over groups of 1,000, 150, and 10. They should always be available to solve the people's common disputes, but have them bring the major cases to you. Let the leaders decide the smaller matters themselves. They will help you carry the load, making the task easier for you. So they delegated this responsibility. Moses delegated this responsibility to these people. There were 10, and then under them, each had 100. And then under each of that 100, they had 1,000. And so this layered system was dealing with all the issues. So it had to be something really, really serious to make it all the way to the leader. From the 1,000 to the 100 to the 10, and then to Moses. That flow chart carried through Israel's hierarchy, the way their normal way of doing things, all the way through the time of the judges and the first 2 kings of Israel, and now here we are with Solomon. Layers and layers of what you could consider lower courts. We have that in our judicial system in the United States. You have lower courts, and you can appeal to state Supreme Court, and if it's something that's federal, you can go all the way to the United States Supreme Court. But you can't just, if you were injured in a car accident and called John Morgan of Morgan & Morgan, he's not going straight to the Supreme Court. So there are different layers and that you had to go through. And this woman, she could have given up at any point along the way. I just can't go on anymore. I have been through, told this story so many times. I've dealt with this so much. But her mama bear instinct kicked in. And she had to get in front of whoever would make the decision to help her get her baby back. That's all she cares about. And we don't know how long this took. It could have taken weeks, could have been months, that she was without her child, that this other woman was claiming that her child was hers. But she just had to appeal. She would escalate. And until she so dedicated about this baby that she did whatever it took to get before the king of Israel, the most wise man in history at that point. And we've seen things like this play out in our own lives. That mother, that grandmother that prays every night when you're out doing, if you were out living like the world or doing whatever, and you've got that mom that's at home just praying, God, please bring my baby home safe. No matter how old that baby is now. God, please. I know that they're making the wrong decisions right now, but Lord, you gave me a promise when I gave birth to this child, when I adopted this baby, when this person came into my life, whatever it is that however you became the biological, legal, or figurative mother figure in this person's life. God gave you promises about that child, and you pray and you hold on. And the older you get, the more difficult it gets, because once kids begin to get out in the world and they have real life responsibilities, we're not even sure that they'll make the right decisions. So we pray. And the older they get, mamas, the older your babies get, the more prayer they need. I had a praying mother, I had a praying grandmother, and I'm glad of it because I'm real confident I wouldn't be here if not for a praying mom. If not for a praying mom, I probably would have lost a leg in that river. I don't know. If not for a praying mom, I would have died years ago because there's been so many instances in my life where I didn't realize how close to death I was until after. But God has given and equipped moms with specific instincts to go to battle in prayer for their babies. So this woman knew, I got to do whatever it takes to get into the presence of the king because the king is the one who has the power to restore my son. Here's what's so encouraging about this. When we look at this woman and we know her past, because the very first thing it tells us is that she's a prostitute. But this is what's encouraging. You don't have to be perfect to have an audience with the king. You don't have to be spotless to be in the presence, to call upon, to appeal to the king. So many people go through their lives avoiding a relationship with Jesus because they've done wrong. You may have heard this. I've heard it, and I still don't really understand it, but people say things, you invite them to church, and they're like, if I walk into church, the roof will cave in. Like, somebody said that to me recently, and I'm just, why? Why is it that the roof would collapse? Because you've messed up so bad that God would destroy a building because you walked in it? No. Or this one is also pretty common. Once I get myself right, then I'll come. No. You don't have to have it all together for the king to hear the cry of your heart. In fact, you can't get yourself right until you experience the presence of the king. He hears you crying out. He hears your heart. There's some mothers crying out in your heart today. I know many mothers battle anxiety. Some are a little too overprotective. You've got the helicopter moms. They just can't seem to cut the cord, and they enable their kids' bad decisions. Some make poor choices in men, and so you've got that's the example that your kids are seeing. Look, this is not directed at anybody today specifically. But here's the good news. Your mistakes have never surprised the king. When you come into the presence of the king, no matter how you got there, you're not hiding anything from him. And he hears your heart's cry. Don't ever think that Jesus is afraid of your mistakes. He redeemed this. Understand this. He redeemed people much worse than you. None of you were persecuting Christians like Paul did. And Paul was knocked to the ground and in order for Jesus to get his attention. There's so many other people, worse people than everyone else in this room. And the Lord redeemed them. And if he can do it for them, he can do it for you. So don't think that because you've messed up. Here is an example of a woman in Scripture who was the lowest of the low in society. She was a prostitute. She was cast aside. People didn't even care about this dispute, but she cared enough to get all the way to the king. She has her day before the king of Israel. She pours her heart out to him. She tells him the story. I had my baby. She had her baby. She rolled over on the baby. She killed it, swapped him out in the middle of the night. I know that that's my baby because when I looked at the dead one in the bed, that's not my kid. It's not mine. And here's one of the beautiful things about this mother. She refused to accept death as the truth. The other mother said, nope, your baby's dead. This mother saw death and knew it was a lie. Mothers in the room today, those who are watching online, the enemy is out to destroy your child in any way that he can. It's time to engage in spiritual warfare. That kind of prayer over your children. And you need to keep at it until you get into the throne room of heaven in the presence of the King. The King of Kings. Well, how can I do that? You go to battle on your knees in prayer, in your prayer closet, when you're driving. I've told it before. I didn't understand it when I was a kid riding down the road. I looked over, my grandmother's talking to herself. And I'm like, this woman's crazy. What was she doing? She was praying. Non-stop. That's the kind of spiritual warfare you need to do over your children and touch the throne of God. Appeal every level until you get to the King and say, Lord, I need you to bring life back into my child. I need you to restore my child. The enemy has taken my child away and given me something back that is death. I will not accept death. I know life. And I want to pray and touch heaven until that life is restored. She refused to accept the dead child as the one she gave birth to. Look, we know, first thing we saw, that this woman's a prostitute, but let me tell you something. The world needs more mothers like her. The world needs more prostitutes? No. The world needs more mothers who refuse to allow the lies of the enemy to steal their children. So in this first challenge to Solomon's God-given wisdom here, he gets his wisdom, and right out the gate, like I said, here's this really difficult challenge he has to use his wisdom for. he recommends this ridiculously obscene move to identify the true mother. And you'll always be able to tell who the real mother is by how they respond to this test. Solomon says, give me a sword. I'll just cut the baby in half. 1/2 for each. If you're the guard standing next to the king and he says that, and you're like, give me a sword, I'm going to cut the baby in half. I'm sorry, king, did you just say that? Yeah, give me your sword. But that's the wisdom of Solomon here. The fake mother, she had no problem with it. She had already experienced death and she knew it. So if I can't have this baby, neither can she. And that's the way the enemy will attack you. Look, Satan had his opportunity. Lucifer was an angel in heaven. He had, the Bible describes these different jewels and pipes and that he was created to make beautiful created angel. And when he would talk, there would be music. So if you've ever heard that Lucifer was the worship leader of heaven, that's not accurate, but that's where it comes from, because Satan was created, he was called the anointed cherub. And yet he said, I will ascend to the Most High. He saw something that he wanted, and he tried to achieve it by overthrowing God. He was cast out of heaven, and along with 1/3 of the angels. So they look and they see you blessed. They see God's hand on your life. They see a mom who loves their child, and they hate it. I want to take that child because I lost what I had, and now my entire purpose is to make you miserable. And so here we have these two women. The mother, the enemy, the one that was believed in the death, wanted both children to be dead, had no problem. But that solution was unacceptable for the true mother. She showed an example that goes from that moment in Solomon's court to the thousands of years leading to right now. And the question I have for you, it's for moms, but it's for everybody. Are you willing to give up your will so that your child may live? That's where it gets tough. This woman was willing to let her child grow up in the home of this other woman who lied and manipulated and did everything. She had killed her own child. And in reality, that had to be difficult on this mother. She's responsible for her own child's death. But her response was to steal another child. But the true mother was willing to give up raising that child in order to see that baby live. It gets tough here because you can't continue to make poor decisions in your life and expect your child to grow up righteous. You can do all you want to give them a better life than you had, but eventually they're going to make their own decisions. And like it or not, you're the example that they see. But this real mom, she passed the test. And she hadn't been the best example of a mother before this. She was identified as a prostitute. But when her son's life was on the line, she had to make a decision. And she appealed all the way to the presence of the king in order to get justice. Verse 27, Solomon says the 4 words that change everything. He says, she is his mother. Looking back, they've come a long way in 11 verses. Just one 11-verse story in the life of Solomon, tucked neatly in 1 Kings. These 11 verses tell so much. Identified in verse 16 as a prostitute, the lowest in society. But then she lays her will aside. It's not what I want. I want to raise this child. God, you gave me this baby. Oh, King, This is my child. I know it's my child. Take child away and put whatever in that place. God, I know that you made this promise for me, and I want this thing so bad. But I would rather someone else have it than it be gone altogether. And when she made the self-sacrifice, the king gave her what she needed most. He gave her her son, and she needed her son. But he gave her, even greater, he gave her an identity. She knew she was the child's mother. The other woman knew she was the child's mother. But now the king acknowledged it. In 11 verses, she goes from being a prostitute to being recognized for her greatest calling by the king of Israel. Her greatest calling was to be a mother. Yeah, she made mistakes in her life, but now she's recognized as a mother. We stand. Godly motherhood has the ability to take what's wrong and make it right in your life. God has given us the gift of motherhood, and if your mother's passed away, mine has too. But even though my mom is gone, there are still motherly influences in my life. Some in this very room right now, whether you know it or not, there are some of you that have been the motherly example in how you've prayed for me and encouraged me. And you can be that for other people as well. Well, my kids are grown and they're doing well. I don't really have much of a mother responsibility anymore. There are so many people who need that love and that encouragement, that mama bear instinct. They need someone to go to spiritual warfare on their behalf. So my encouragement to you as I begin to close, first is to ask, what are you willing to sacrifice for the lives of your children? Are you willing to give up your will? Some of you would say, I gave up my will a long time ago. I was on the path to do this and then ended up getting pregnant, and now I'm this. Well, God called you to be who he called you to be. This woman was no longer known as a prostitute. She was a mother. Don't be discouraged. My challenge for the ladies in the room today, no matter how old you are, you might be 15 and think, I'm nowhere near being a mother. That's right. But there's some younger girl, there's some little girl in Ridge Kids that needs a 15-year-old role model and an example. Don't think that because you're not a biological mother, or you're not even old enough to be one, that this is irrelevant to you. I want you to prayerfully consider identifying another woman in this church, in this community, in your family, and in your wherever, that you will commit to pray for that child in the same way that this mother appealed all the way to the king. You might have a lost child in your home that pray for them. Pray for the young men, pray for the young women, pray for others. Just identify somebody else and say, and pray about it on the front end. God, who do you want me to be that spiritual prayer warrior over? And the more you do it, the more I believe that God will make it clear who he wants you to be. And what happens? We begin this prayer over one another. Well, I don't know what to say. I don't want to just go lay hands on them. I barely know them. Just go to battle in your prayer closet. Call out their name. Because you don't know the battles that they face. And when you pray for them, there might be a young man that is contemplating ending his own life. And the Lord place him on your heart. And you go to battle his spiritual warfare, calling out his name. And what ends up happening is somebody else responds to the prompting of the Lord one day while that teenager's at school. And he's thinking what he's going to do when he gets home and how he's going to end it all. But he walks past a classroom and a teacher steps out and says, "Hey, Johnny, you doing okay today? I appreciate you." And that one little moment of encouragement can change the course of that guy's eternity. it's saturating these lives with prayer. It's appealing every level until the king steps in and says, yeah, this is life. You are not choosing death. You are choosing life. And it rewrites who you are.